Welcome to episode 8 of Mind of a Theist. I'm joined here today with Cody. Cody, will just sort of set the stage as we usually do. Just tell us about yourself. How long have you been a Christian and how did you come to faith?
Yeah, so I guess I've been a Christian now for about 3.5 years. So how did I came to faith? Well, I guess I was initially I was an atheist, but I wasn't one of the intense, really intellectual atheists. I was kind of like just watched a Richard Dawkins kind of documentary,
Hmm.
um, and yeah, so I was kind of raised nominally Catholic. I was baptized into the Catholic Church, but my family was not practicing, and I don't think they even believe in a God. But tradition they took me.
Hmm.
So God or Christianity wasn't really a big part of my life, and the Christianity that was a big part of my life was not very intellectual in any sort of sense. And so I didn't get the best picture of what it means to believe in a God or what theism means, or some legitimately intellectual theistic people who could argue with me or test
Hmm.
me or challenge me. So as I grew up and got to high school,
Yeah.
I would tell people I'm an atheist. And yeah, I didn't do too much probing into it, but that was kind of who I was as a high school student. I kind of was in the mindset that Christianity was really stupid
Yeah.
and that all Christians were stupid. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the idea of faith, it sounded to me like one of the most stupid things ever until I was randomly on YouTube and I saw an apologetic video from some Christian apologetics, and it was really intriguing to me
Hmm.
that there were actually good cases for theism and that there
Yeah.
was actually legitimate reasons to believe in a God and
Feel
legitimate.
feel free to name drop as well. Any sources are good sources.
Yeah, so I got into a guy named Ravi Zacharias. He's a bit of a sledgehammer, but I love that dude.
Hmm.
Um, I got into Chris White as well. He's kind of like this American patch together these PowerPoints and make some videos, but he's good and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
references his stuff and he's legit. He's not a crazy American dude.
Hmm. He ain't Mario.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Um, and yeah, so there was a few guys that I listened to. Greg Kokel, he's one of them. He's started Stand to Reason, which is this Californian-based apologetic group. I thought he was really good.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess it segued into me listening to sermons and Bible teachings
Hmm.
and from guys like John MacArthur and John Piper and a few really good Christian guys, which led on to Tim Keller and some
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
guys. And that led to my theological convictions as well. But yeah, so 3.5 years I'm here. I'm at Bible college studying to be a pastor. It's interesting how that all worked out in the end. But yeah, I guess that's in a nutshell how I came to faith.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, excellent. So I'll tell you what. We'll move into definitions, I believe.
Okay.
So define God in terms to somebody who is completely secular, who has never heard of the concept of God. Define what God is.
Yeah, I'll just say God is an infinite being that created everything that we see.
Hmm.
He created every intricacy from the smallest atom to the smallest what is it? Electron? No, it's not the smallest, is it?
No, no, no.
There's heaps of small stuff. Anyway, to the biggest galaxy, this God is outside of space and time, and this God created everything. In everything has its being in God.
Yeah.
And yeah, this. So I guess I'll just go with the way Bible kind of presents this. The God who created heavens and the earth.
Hmm.
That's pretty much how I would define God. Yeah.
Yeah. I usually after this I ask, does this align with Yahweh? But if you're going for the biblical God,
Yeah.
kind of hard to not say yes. Do any other gods fit the bill, or have you studied any other religions that may also relate to this God?
Well, I guess the Islamic God, in a sense, might.
Hmm.
As far as I know, the Islamic God is, all powerful, created heavens and earth, that kind of
Yes.
stuff. So I
Yep.
guess the Islamic God would fit that bill. Like a lot of
The Jewish God.
yeah.
Yeah.
a lot of the religions that came out of Judaism and that early Judaic monotheistic mindset,
Yeah.
for sure. I'm not aware of many other religions. You can bring them to mind. Off the top of my head, I'm not aware of many that would fit the bill in the sense that unless you wanted to go down the Hindu path and say, no, actually Hindus do believe in one God, he just manifests himself in all the forms of these other gods. Maybe that Hindu God could fit that bill as well. But yeah, I wouldn't be able to.
At this point in time, if you roll a dice, there's bound to be a religion pertaining to it.
Yeah, I'm sure there are places, many places where there are gods who claim to be the ones that created everything and to be the supreme being. Yeah, of course they exist.
So the next question is, given the thousands of other religions, why is your faith correct?
Yeah, okay. Why is my faith correct? Well, I don't think I can answer that question entirely objectively.
Yeah.
Not in the sense that I can't prove without a shadow of doubt that, yes, of course, Christianity is true. The reason I think Christianity is true is because I think there's a very solid, good case you can build for Jesus and what he claimed about himself. There's a big, solid case that you can make for the resurrection that actually occurred in history.
Yeah.
So why am I a Christian? Well, in the sense I did have a subjective experience where I, quote unquote, experienced salvation. But in the sense that, as what the Bible kind of claims, is like when someone becomes a Christian, they become regenerated, their heart becomes new, and your desires change. And that was very real for me. So I went from having these desires which were opposed to the God of the Bible and did not want his intrusion into my life in any sort of way, to now, not only do I want his intrusion in my life, I love the fact that he's with me and he cares about me, and my desires have totally shifted from one to the other. And I don't think that happened of my own accord. But that's a subjective experience, so I can't prove that. But that's my experience.
With because I if you haven't noticed yet, I love chasing trails. So with that being said, with the idea of having your sort of, we wouldn't say morality, but we'll say urges and whatnot shift to a more Christian line, would you say that this could possibly be societal osmosis? So in a sense of when tribalism in a way. When around people who share a certain view, we have a tendency to take on their belief systems to fit in, as well as change our views when provided with. So Dan Wall, when I interviewed him, he said, "My father has no reason to lie to me," and there's a lot of people who have no reason to lie to me. With that being said, though, we can also make that assumption of if somebody is good or knowledgeable about one thing, it's called the halo effect, actually. It's a really fascinating psychological phenomena. We can then shift our views on morals to cater to that person or to cater to a tribe that we wish to fit in with. So could you see that as sort of a possibility?
Yeah, that could definitely have come into play in effect. Early on in my Christian walk, I wasn't it wasn't like I was surrounded by Christians. I had two Christian friends. I love them to death, but at that point in time, I don't know where they were in their mindset, and they weren't necessarily the most. They didn't help me the most intellectually. I felt quite alone when I became a Christian.
Oh, definitely.
I felt like there was no one that really in the church that I was going to when I started going to church. This is actually a little bit after I came to faith. I was still wrestling with a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, so I definitely that group, I guess, mindset, I don't think came into play initially. I kind of just knew one day that I had to stop what I was doing. I just knew that it was wrong. I knew that I had to change my life. So there was a moral aspect to it, and that came. It wasn't completely in a vacuum. I didn't just decide one day. It came through hearing the gospel. It came through hearing certain stuff. So you could say, oh, I was, affected by the things that I was watching on YouTube, and then that changed me. And then there was, I guess, that group mentality that was happening with me and some people online that I'd never met before. You could say that for sure. That's the thing with subjective experiences. Like, I could explain it one way, someone can explain it another way.
Oh, definitely.
But I think I'm pretty convinced that there was a very much a legitimate change in my life because no, I wasn't really much of a fan of Christianity, and nothing was going to change me. I don't think unless God Himself still stepped in. I think He did.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic response. So I'll tell you what, we'll do a mixed bag interview. I just had one where we solely focus on morality, but we'll do a bit of a mixed bag. So we'll start off with some admittedly not softball questions, but some questions I'm sure you've come across. So the first is the problem with evil.
Yep.
How would you respond to the problem with evil?
The problem of evil.
Yes.
Yes. So the first thing I would do is I would try to define evil. And I don't see evil as a thing that exists in and of itself. It's not something that I see more as like darkness. So darkness is an absence of light. Yeah. So I see evil as an absence of good.
That's good.
So trying to give a reason for evil is not necessarily I have to show why evil was created. I don't think evil was created. I think it's an absence of something. So I think it's an absence of good. And I think because God's character in and of itself morally is the entire epitome of good. Yeah. Any lack of goodness is evil. So I think, evil came about because I think God allowed for there to be a lack of goodness. And whatever reason He did that for, I think He has a morally sufficient one, even though what that reason is a really hard question to answer.
Alright. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll move into the pertaining to that. Yep. I've got two quotes here. One is the famous Epicurus quote, which, "Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then He is not omnipotent. Is He able but not willing? Then He is malevolent. Is He both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is He neither able nor willing? Then why call Him God?" How would you sort of respond to the Epicurean mindset?
So that's the logic of like, if God's all powerful and evil exists, He must be able to stop evil.
It's sort of okay. So like, if evil began to exist, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Evil began to exist, therefore evil must have a cause. If evil did not begin to exist, everything that did not begin to exist has no cause. Then
for sure, evil did come into existence.
So therefore, if God exists, either evil has a cause, God is the ultimate cause of evil, He is therefore not omnibenevolent, or evil has a cause, it was created by a rival non-temporal mind, perhaps a rival deity or something like that, if you want to go into Zoroastrianism and Hinduism, that God could not or would not overcome, implying either malevolence or non-omnipotence. Or evil did not have a cause, God desired to destroy evil but could not, He's therefore not omnipotent. Evil did not have a cause, God did not destroy or desired to destroy evil. He's therefore not omnibenevolent. Oh, that was a mouthful. So it's essentially saying that. Yeah. I think that's sufficient for example.
I get the explanation. I think because you were saying that there was a desire. If God didn't desire, like He had to desire to stop it.
Yes.
I think I would just insert a line of logic into all that, and I would just say God has morally sufficient reasons to allow evil to exist.
Okay.
So I would say I to define what those morally sufficient reasons are is a different thing, but I think He had morally sufficient reasons which protects His benevolence.
Yeah.
So whatever those reasons were, He allowed evil to exist for a better purpose. So He had a purpose for it. It wasn't simply just that, He's kind of like, oh no, evil exists. Yeah. No, he obviously knew it was going to come into being. And some people look at that and say, well, that's too much.
Yeah.
If He knew it was going to happen and He created everything, I can't worship that God. That God is not benevolent. And I think God had good reasons.
Okay, so it's...
God had good reasons that maintain His character and who He is, and allow for evil to be a thing.
So would you say it's an almost Platonistic sort of view? Have you heard of Plato wrote this book, and essentially he was saying, are things good because they come from God, or are things good on their own? So for instance...
I'd say the former.
Yeah, no, it's more like this. If God kills, is that a good act? Because God did that? Or is it still an evil act performed by a good entity? That's more of the argument.
Okay, so the question is like God killed.
Yeah.
how can God kill if he's good?
Yeah.
Because he himself defined killing as evil.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you'd have to make a distinction between what the Bible sees as killing and what is allowed and what isn't allowed. So not all killing, according to the Bible, is wrong.
Yeah.
The only killing that I believe God has in mind when he talks about the Ten Commandments is he's not saying justice, don't kill in order to give justice. So I think when God kills, it's justice.
Yeah.
When God kills, it's punishment. So it's a capital punishment administered by God as a judge. And if you read the Old Testament, God is depicted as a judge constantly.
Yeah.
And he is a judge and he hands out punishment. So no one in a Jewish mindset would read that and go, God is inconsistent, because then when they see God, he uses that as he kills for punishment. And that's the same as what he gave to his people as laws. For instance, our countries, so Western countries by and large, have pretty much abolished the death penalty. But the death penalty was a thing for a while, and these were in heavily Christian nations because they understood the distinction between killing without a cause, without a reason, just because you desire it, and killing in order to do justice. So there's a very big distinction between killing. So God is consistent. He doesn't kill someone randomly.
Well, it sort of follows this logic though. Is we can move from outside of killing and more move it to any acts we find morally abhorrable. So for instance, we'll take the flood. For instance, now if God is omnipotent and knows everything, omniscient, then he is sure to know that his creation will fall.
Yes.
If he's sure to know why his creation will fall, why then look upon them and then wipe them out completely? Now, if we see that he saved Noah and whatnot, but if this was simply just or righteous slaying, how can we determine whether this is sort of true for humans? So, for instance, if I stone a non-believer as commanded, is this right because it is commanded by God? So is that morally correct to do because it is commanded by God? Or is there still a moral obligation that sort of makes that feel wrong, makes me, not want to do this? It sort of comes down to, the Euthyphro sort of dilemma, as well as sort of the problem with omniscience is he already knows what's going to happen. So why judge something and create something just to kill it, essentially? I'll sort of use this to segue into a question of why create something just to suffer? Like why create anything just to have it die in agony for all eternity?
All right, that's different from the starting point.
Yeah, no, it is. It is.
Yeah.
You can answer both. I will admit that I sort of rambled there because I was trying to work out who had the biggest response. I think it was Occam's razor, but anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So the problem of why does God create people, knowing that there's going to be suffering, and knowing that evil will happen to them?
Yeah.
Because God has a purpose, despite that purpose through that. What's really hard for Christians to do or anyone for that matter to do, is to peer behind the curtain and to see how God is orchestrating everything, to see why he's doing it. And something for us in a limited sense, for instance, me, I've been in this world for 22 years. It's such a tiny prick of time for me to be able to answer why, for instance, if something bad happens to me, why that happened to me.
Yeah, sure.
I've got such limited knowledge. So to answer case by case is very hard. But to answer largely in the broad range of what God's purpose is for everything, you can kind of answer. And I would say that it's because God wants to bring glory to himself. Yeah. And he wants to share himself with his people. So he has in mind this greater, larger purpose. So for instance, for me, when I suffer, how I suffer as a Christian is different to how a non-Christian will suffer.
Yeah.
But for me as a Christian, I have a promise in Romans 8:28 that that all things will work together for good for those that love God and are called according to His purposes. So that even it doesn't make everything that I'm going through good. It doesn't mean that the hardships I go through or the trials that I go through are good or in and of themselves now because of that.
Yeah.
It just means that they're not meaningless. It just means that there's got a purpose to it. So it's not just absolutely meaningless, because that would suck.
Yeah.
All of our sufferings in and of themselves were completely and utterly meaningless. No, God had a good purpose. He didn't orchestrate it. He might have allowed it. There's different ways that God's providence relates to humanity. But regardless, God will cause all things to work together for good. So, yeah.
Also, with in regards to the first part of the question, if you have any responses for that, feel free to sort of share them.
Sorry, I already forgot what it was.
It's alright, I actually did too. Anyway, so in response to what
I was trying to keep up with everything you're saying.
Yeah, sorry.
That point, yeah.
I will openly admit I rambled a little bit there.
Oh, that's fine.
But basically, two responses to that.
Yep.
One is Tracy Harris, a wonderful woman, said to a caller who sort of said the same thing to her. She said, "You either have a God who sends child rapists to rape children, or you have a God who simply watches it and says, 'When you're done, I'm going to punish you.' If I could stop a person from raping a child, I would. That's the difference between me and your God." How would you respond to that if everything is good eventually? The rape of a child doesn't seem to serve much purpose outside the pleasure of the rapist. A child born with illness and dying the next day just to have its parents completely and utterly break down. Obviously, all these sort of horrible things, if they are part of a plan, does this mean that human morality can almost surpass God's allowance of this? I mean, if a human's willing to stop this sort of thing, and God is not, what does that say about God to you?
Well, you're comparing the infinite, almighty God to a human. Yeah. And to this human who has this very limited knowledge of what's happening. Well, they'll know what's happening. Yeah. But the question of why it's happening and the greater goal of that, and seeing all of history right before their eyes, they don't know. They have no idea. They just see something evil happening. And if they were in that situation and that they could then go stop it, that's because God had orchestrated that would be the case. So that's even in a sense, that's by His hand. But if it was allowed to happen, it's because God has this knowledge of everything. And I don't want to take away from how horrible of a thing it is. I completely get how horrible it is. These horrible things happening. And I don't think God is in this mindset of being like, "Oh, it's fine, guys, I've got this." I mean, He has got this, but he wants us to be brokenhearted. He wants us to see. And I think we largely, instead of looking inwards and focusing on the human heart and focusing on what causes humans to do these horrible things, why is everything so messed up and broken? We point our finger to God and blame Him for everything and don't take any responsibility for ourselves. So I think largely, yes, if we have this low view of sin and this very high view of humanity, we're always going to have a low view of God. I don't think it's possible to have a high view of humanity and a high view of God at the same time, because you see humans doing horrible things and you immediately point it back to God. And what it really should do for us is go, humans are messed up, and they need help. And that's what the Christian mindset is consistently teaches, is that we're really messed up. There's a good, is it Malcolm Muggeridge or G.K. Chesterton? One of them had a really cool quote, and that's, "The depravity of man is the most empirically verifiable fact. At the same time, it's the most intellectually resisted." And I think you can look through all of history, you can look at what's going on now, and to say that there's nothing wrong with humans, I think it's empirically verifiable that humans are morally deficient. And it's harder because a lot of us think we're great people, but I think that's one of the offensive, I think, messages of Christianity, because it says to us actually humans, you're not that great,
Yeah.
and it deals a big blow to our ego and our pride, which is
I think that's something I've begun to notice through these interviews actually is the sort of I don't want to say hatred of humanity and of the world that seems to come from sort of a Christian mindset. And it was Malcolm Muggeridge. I looked it up while you were quoting it actually.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man.
No, that's fine.
Good old Malcolm Muggeridge. He was a good British journalist who was an atheist who became a Christian. He's a good dude.
There you go.
If there's anyone listening, I'd recommend him.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't sign up on everything he says though.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think also with Tracy's quote, I'll leave this as sort of the last question on this morality.
Yeah.
But
cool.
In Tracy's quote, she's more saying that yes, humans are abhorrible and terrible things happen.
Yep. Cool.
But God either orchestrates that, so He either makes us do these things by designing us, by creating us, by putting these urges, by making those circumstances, and refusing to interject, or we have free will, and God simply not delights, but He's unable to interject. So it's more an issue with not whether humans are an abomination or not, but rather, does God have the ability to do so, or does He just simply allow these things to happen? And if He simply allows these things to happen, I mean, it goes back to the Epicurean mindset, but then it's very hard to call Him good. Yeah.
It'll just tie back into my previous thing, that God has morally sufficient reasons for allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that's really hard. I totally get it.
Oh yeah.
I totally get it. Like I'm not sitting here going, oh yeah, nah.
Yeah.
It's easy. God has morally sufficient reasons. He's got that. Like I understand how horrible it is, and that's why, I just have to have faith in who God is and His character.
Yeah.
And that He's got a reason. I don't know what it is. For case by case, I have no idea why it's happened, but I trust in Him.
Yeah.
And His greater purposes will come about, and that's hard. It's hard to do. I totally get that. I don't think it means it's an answer.
Yeah.
It's an answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And back to the free will thing. I think by and large Christians historically, even if you fall into the Arminian persuasion of will, it's that no human creature actually has free will entirely. We have a will. It's not completely free. So even an Arminian doesn't believe that. They just think that they have free will when it comes to God. But largely we're not. Like Paul uses the language that we're actually enslaved to sin. Yeah. So there's definitely this bondage to sin that we need to be set free from, and there's also a delight in it. So we're not just we want it as well as we are bound to it. So there's this double mindset of it's like Stockholm syndrome. Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. And I'm sure many scientists would actually agree with you with the we have a will, but it's not entirely free.
Yeah. I don't think I think it'd be incredibly hard to prove that anyone has a free will.
Oh, it is.
You can show someone can make decisions. For sure. And the Bible itself doesn't say anywhere that we have free will, but it does. We make decisions and we're held accountable to our decisions. I don't know why we have to have libertarian free will to be held accountable for our actions. But yeah, there's this very, very Western mindset which is like, no, we must have libertarian free will to be held accountable.
The don't tread on me theology, essentially.
It comes out of American independence. That whole mindset of But yeah,
it's interesting. All right, well, we'll move away from morality.
Yeah, cool.
And move into history, I think. Why doesn't the Bible talk about how the universe and life on Earth actually came to be, and instead uses a creation myth? So, for instance, not only the Bible, but many religions they don't explain cosmic evolution. They don't explain the whole Europa and the moon sort of smashing together and becoming a satellite. And anyway, the point is, it's not historically accurate from what we know about the beginnings of the universe. So how do you sort of reconcile that as a Christian?
I guess you just have to ask the question of what's the purpose of Genesis 1? What's it trying to say? Why is it trying to say it? And if we come in the 21st century, or even the 18th century, and put our mindset and say, no, it has to apply to our criteria, and it has to fit our purposes, it's foolish. We need to ask what the author intended when they wrote Genesis 1. And that's a harder question. So I'm in the process of trying to work out what I'm going to do with Genesis 1, how I'm going to read it. But largely, I think what it's doing is it's not trying, largely people try to make it scientific, so then they can disprove it.
Yes.
But is that its purpose? Is that what Genesis 1 is trying to say? I think what Genesis 1 is trying to say is, no, God created everything, and he created everything good. And then something went wrong. And that's the point of the Genesis narrative. Now, as to whether when you start getting into the literal aspects of stuff, whether it starts with Adam and Eve, or it starts with Noah, or it starts with Abraham, is a heavily debated thing in Christian circles. I think largely, I don't think I could ever end up taking a entirely literal approach to Genesis 1. I don't think it's intended to be that way. I think what it's intending to say is, no, God created everything, and it's giving a for the you got to imagine when this is written, like I think 3,500 years ago. We have Moses writing the Torah. You've got these really prehistoric people, and you want them, and you want God to write Darwinian evolution to them. These people have no concept of this. He might be able to have it, but there is a process to his creation. So you could say, oh, look, that's an early form of that, if you wanted to have a theistic evolution mindset. But you've got to understand who God's writing to and the limitations on these people and their understanding. So purpose of Genesis 1, we could talk more. I think I need to do more research in how I personally am going to look at that, but I don't think it poses any problem for Christian belief. Because of its narrative and mythological kind of setting, I guess.
Well, comprehension is obviously something important, and even scholastically, it's hard to know why, if you believe Moses wrote Genesis, why he would have done so. And also, I'm sure that question was a hot topic. I've been spamming you with talk origins for quite some time now.
Yeah, well, I've had to revisit the whole thing.
It's good.
No, but it's been good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's gonna challenge me. It's gonna push me, and I might end up falling into a largely literalistic interpretation, well, face value interpretation of what the purpose it's trying to get across. I might not. But we'll see. It's one of those things that I don't think it's absolutely essential.
So why is it that God waited 4,000 years to provide a path of salvation so human souls can go to heaven? There's a really good song called "Why Don't Bees Go to Heaven?" And for instance, why wait? Why create an Earth? Wait 4,000 years, have humans pop up, have humans gain sentience, and then after all that time, give them an offer for salvation.
So I guess implicit presuppose in that question is that there was no way to obtain salvation before Jesus came. And I think, no, there was a way. And the way is the way Abraham had. And that's to have faith in God. That's to trust in him. And I would argue from Romans, like the book of Romans that Paul wrote, from Romans 1 and Romans 2 and 3, that I think what we can know as people that haven't received the Bible and the special revelation and Jesus, what they can know is they can know that a God exists, because the creation is proof of God's invisible qualities. We can get to that later if you like. And then,
of course.
And then you can talk about this moral code that God has written, like he's written his law on everyone's hearts. And so I think what you can know about God is that he exists, and that you don't match up to his moral requirements. You don't even match up to your own conscience, your own moral requirements, which means that you need mercy from this God.
Mm.
And I think that's what we can know about God without the Bible. Whether people believe that or not, that's an entirely different theological question. But I think that's what we can know.
Yeah.
So, so I would say people before Christ came could potentially, of course, they would throw themselves in the mercy of God and they would receive it. They would receive it. They wouldn't know what form it came into until Jesus died on the cross, and then they would know. Then they would know, and they would go, okay, this is how it's going to happen. So the sacrifice of Jesus applied back and it applied forwards, and that's consistent Christian teaching. It's not something new that I'm making up now.
No. If it helps,
or else like King David, Abraham, none of those guys would be saved. So no, that was definitely a big point. So no, of course, people could have been saved. God provided His way of salvation at the right time when He wanted to. I don't know why He chose that time. Did He choose that time? He just did. That was in His sovereign plan. That was the time. It had to happen at some time. You could ask that question about whenever it happened. So He chose that time. That was the time that it happened, where His Son entered the world, and that would be how I'd answer that question.
If it helps, I've had Anthony Patterson assert the same thing. So that's a lecturer here at Morling, and he says the exact same thing. So with that, why did civilization exist for so long before God appeared to Abraham? So if Adam, well, even before Adam, I mean, well, it depends how you view Adam, but before Abraham, there were obviously some that's what the pre-Abrahamic era is. The Mesopotamians, one that come to mind. Without a God to sort of reveal themselves at any point, how did those civilizations exist, and why aren't they recorded in the Bible?
Sorry, your question is...
Oh, sorry.
People...
So people existed before Abraham.
Yeah.
God or Yahweh did not reveal Himself to them. If we look at the Bible and if we look at historic records.
Yes.
Why would this be?
So why did God not reveal Himself?
Yes, more or less. And also, why does the Bible not explain that there were civilizations pre-Abraham?
I think it presupposes it. I mean, Abraham goes to Egypt.
Yeah.
It exists. So, of course, the Bible doesn't have to say everything. As if, why are we put on the Bible that it has to explain the entire world the way it was at that time? It's just telling a story about this guy named Abraham, and these things are happening around him. We know that Egypt existed. So why God didn't reveal Himself? Well, I think that'll tie back into my question that He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to reveal them. They have enough. They have enough. I think that's... I mean, people would disagree, obviously, with that. They would think, obviously, no, we don't have enough. But according to the Bible, at least, it would seem to be the case that they would say, no, we have enough knowledge that God does exist, and we have enough knowledge that we have fallen short. And what Paul argues is that we've exchanged the glory of God. So this God that exists, we suppressed Him, we didn't want Him, we exchanged Him for something that we liked better. And I think that's what everyone does, including many Christians in churches. They don't really like the God of the Bible, so they invent a God in their mind and then call Him the God of the Bible.
I agree completely with that.
So that's this mindset. That's what idolatry is. Idolatry isn't just worshipping an idol. I mean, in that time, that's what it was. But it was inventing a God that you liked better. And everyone does this. Even an atheist who wouldn't believe in a God, they would put something in the place of Him. This would at least be the biblical mindset. I'm sure a lot of people are going to get mad at that.
Don't worry.
And I don't want you to get mad at that.
But
something takes that preeminence, that dominance in your life, whether it is even yourself. So God holds you accountable for what you put in His place, His deserved place. He deserves to be the number one thing in your life, but instead you put something else there. And that could be anything from money to sex to drugs to
dank anime.
Anime. It could be anything. It could be study. It could be your worldview. Anything, your theology. Anything can become an idol. Anything can take the rightful place of God, and that's as much of a struggle for Christians as it is for anyone else, because I think everyone's heart is so easily led away. It's like the hymn, "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing." There's a line in it that says, "Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh take and seal it. Seal it for Thy courts above." And it's like that mindset of, humans constantly wander away from God, and they put something else in His place, and that's that would be my mindset. So you've got these civilizations who ought to have known better, but instead have put all these other gods in the place of Yahweh, the one true God.
Yeah. Well, that's sufficient for that. So we'll have a bit of a Mesopotamic romp. If you compare the stories of Noah with Ziusudra in the story of Gilgamesh, the same could be said of many faiths surrounding the area as well, with tales, Sargon of Akkad and Moses and whatnot. How do you sort of reconcile this as a Christian?
Yeah. So I'd make it. I'd add some more to the list. So Native Americans had similar flood kind of
the rainbow snake,
stories. Aboriginal Australians had similar stories. And so you've got all these people, different parts of the world, similar story. Now, I don't think that's. I think that's actually awesome. I think that very, very much, for me at least, verifies that there's in the collective consciousnesses of all these people. There's these stories of these great floods.
Yeah.
Even in Peru, which is a desert, all these places, these great flood. Some of them with people living and being sheltered. And I would think the closer you get to the people who have the correct story, or the closer you get to the events, you would have it would become clearer and clearer and clearer. So I would just say that's if it actually happened, you would expect to find it in the cultures.
Okay.
So
with that being said, how can we know that Dan Thomas had I almost called him Mountain Man again. Oh well, there.
Good old man.
He said that it was other paganistic sort of religions slapping their gods in place of this. Now I'll give you the same response I gave to him. Is how do we know that the Bible's iteration of this story is the correct one, and it hasn't simply not stolen but reinterpreted those tales through a Judaic sort of lens?
I would say depends on when you date the Torah as to how you answer that question. Does that mean that the earliest one is by definition the right one and every other one is derived from that? Yeah. I can't answer that on a purely objective basis. So that's one of the things where, so you could have, for instance, you could be a detective and you've got 8 different stories, very similar, but key differences. Which one's the right one? Well, the detective obviously is going to be like, well, I'm going to look into it, I'm going to do all this stuff, but because of the nature and because how long ago these things are written, and the sparsity of the archaeological finds,
even narrative style is quite
So how do I know that this one's the right one? I don't. I'm not going to admit.
No, that's good. That's as I've said many a times on this thing, one of the most honest things we can do as human beings is say I don't know. Well, it's a perfectly reasonable response. So we'll move into a bit of theology. The Bible says to worship God, obviously, and to obey your mother and father. But what do you do if your parents tell you to worship other gods? So this is 2 commands contradicting one another. So what do you do with the contradictory commands?
I think there's a hierarchy of commands. So I would say, like for instance, my parents are not Christians. So if they commanded me to leave Christianity, leave the faith, I would go no, because I have a higher priority to my Heavenly Father, who has adopted me into His family. But as far as their commands don't collide with God's, I should try to be honoring to them. So obeying your mother and father. Is that what the? I think from memory, I'm pretty sure it's honor your mother and father. I'm pretty sure it's honor your mother and father. But God is the one deserving of all honor. You do honor your mother and father, especially when they work hard for you and they do a lot. Whether they deserve it or not, we should honor them. And I do honor my parents. They did a great job at raising me. Even though there's a lot of mess ups along the way, and they know I'm very sorry about the stuff that happened in the past. But that's the way I would answer that. I guess there's a hierarchy. you owe God your utmost allegiance. Everything comes from it. And I think the more you put your allegiance in God, you actually raise everything. So I honor my parents more. The more I put my faith in God, it doesn't diminish. Although there could be, for instance, for Islamic people that come to faith in Christianity, they face death.
They do. Yeah.
And they do get killed. Like, it actually happens.
It's Christopher Hitchens' Smoking Gun. Whenever he was talking to any Muslim, he often said, "What is the crime? What punishment does apostasy face?" And yeah, it's always certainly death.
Yeah. And so, but I think, Jesus said, I'm going to bring mother against daughter, father against son. And that's because I think, coming to faith is, for a lot of people, a big thing. Becoming a Christian for a lot of people is a big thing. And, Jesus makes big, heavy claims on us. He says,
Definitely.
Do it. If it means you're going to die, follow me. Yeah. What does a profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his very soul? Yeah. So Jesus is offering us something far better than what this world has to offer, and that's the point. That's why people become Christians in those circumstances, because his offer is way better, and it's despite their imminent death, or they might escape. Who knows what God's going to do? But when our mindset is this is all we have, this world, and of course we're going to take offense at what Jesus said, but if we believe, no, we can trust what he says. And we can put our lives on it. Some people would say that's irresponsible. And if he's wrong, it is. Like Paul, he writes, if, the resurrection didn't happen, Christians should be pitied above all men. That we should be pitied above all people. Because we're dying. We're getting killed for this. And if it's not true, we're dying in vain. It's meaningless. And so, I echo what Paul says. But if it's true, then we've all got to do it.
So,
but
with if commanded by Yahweh to do as Abraham did to his son, would you do so?
You got to understand the context of. So if you just get this story of this dude that God called, and then he was like, "Sacrifice your son to me," and you'd be like, "Whoa, this God is intense." You got to understand that that's the covenant. God has made this covenant with Abraham, and he said, "I'm going to make your descendants like the stars in the sky, and it's going to come through this boy named Isaac." And then he goes, "Now kill this boy. Kill the covenant. Kill the covenant I made with you. Do you trust me to bring the covenant about?" And the point wasn't sacrifice your son because I'm this bloodthirsty God. It's like, do you trust me enough that I will still bring my covenant about even if you kill the covenant? How would I do that? So when Abraham's about to go sacrifice Isaac, he says, we'll both return together. So he's got this mindset, no, God's going to do something. God's going to do something. Whether he'll resurrect Isaac from the dead or he'll do something else. Abraham's trusting that Isaac is going to bring about these descendants, and God has promised that, so it's going to happen whether I kill him or I don't. And that's what's at. But then that larger question of would I do what God says, even if it's something intense like killing my own son? I think I would need explanation. And I'd have to know objectively that it was God. I'd have to know why. And if I had something similar like a covenant to Abraham, where it was really quite a testing of my faith. Like, by and large, if all parameters in that question was legit, it was as legit as possible. I knew it was God. God said it. My faith and trust in God is so much that I would. But that's obviously presupposing that this God does then exist in this question, and that he is all good, and that he is holy and righteous and just. In which case, what he's commanded me to do is not evil. It must be by definition if we're going to presuppose that this God exists.
It's as I said, it's a Platonistic view.
It's one of those questions that you can't really get wrong.
No, exactly. So this one's an interesting question, but I love asking it to people who study here with me. If you found out that it was all a hoax, right now, how would your life change?
I would be incredibly depressed for a very, very long time. Whether I would be suicidal or not is a completely different thing, but I would feel this. Like, before I became a Christian, I was a nihilist. I'll go straight back to that, I think.
Straight back to nihilism.
Nihilism. And there's just nothing there in nihilism for me.
Nietzsche agrees.
And I don't even have this, just like, my desires have changed. I want to do all these good things, and now it's just like, my whole life would change.
Yeah,
like, everything would change. So if I found out it was a hoax, it would destroy me. But who knows what will happen after that? I'd be comatose. With sadness for a long period of time, and then something will emerge at the end of it.
Exactly. It's actually something that a lot of I had this brought up to me about a lot of people who I've interviewed respond in the same way. Of if they found out it was a hoax, they'd just end their life. And I find that interesting. Matt Dillahunte's response to that was actually kind of interesting. He goes, why am I doing this? It's all terrible. And his partner goes, oh, well, we've still got 10 minutes left to show. And Matt goes, oh, right, because any moment that I'm alive is much better than being dead. And I found that one of the more interesting approaches to it.
Who knows what mindset I'd have? I might adopt his mindset. Look, I wouldn't be able to.
Well, it's the thing with atheism. Well, some others will say otherwise, but it has no prescribed belief system. It's the very definition, and it is funny though that some people have tried to shift that to. If you're an atheist, you must believe X, rather than if you're an atheist, then...
Yeah, I have experienced that with people I've had a conversation with, that they humans are very religious in nature.
Oh, definitely.
And they end up swapping it for this atheistic religion. I'm not saying all do.
No, I definitely agree with that.
But I'm sure most atheists would agree with me.
I agree. I think it's just zeal. Zeal is a part of the human spirit.
Yeah.
So
where does that come from?
If it was all a hoax, though, how would history? I'll do all three, because usually I break this out. But history, science, and human relations change.
Okay. I think largely history and science won't change.
I agree.
The worldview is thoroughly secular, thoroughly in the sciences. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's almost largely atheistic. It presupposes that God doesn't exist most of the time. And history largely would try to say that there's nothing miraculous about it. These mythologies made up by the Jews. If it was proven to be a hoax, it would just, I think the world, there'd be a lot of sadness from Christians.
Of course.
There'd be some that would persist regardless.
Definitely.
And then there'd be other forms of religions that would burst up. It depends whether it's proved Christianity is false or whether it's proved God is false.
We'll say
some could just become like. They could maintain their Christian identity. There are plenty of people that call themselves Christians that don't even believe in miracles, don't believe in a whole bunch of stuff in the Bible, don't even believe it's the word of God and things like that. And they still persist saying they're Christians.
Yeah.
Some of them don't even believe Jesus existed.
Yeah.
And they persist in saying they're Christians. So Christians wouldn't die off. Yeah. A lot of them would just be like, see, we told you. Now you can be coming to our churches.
Yeah. So if nothing in the world would change,
well, things would change for sure.
Well, definitely.
The intellectual mindset, that's what I was kind of answering. So
would you say that they would improve scientifically, or would you say that it would be a degradation? Like, would they regress?
No, I don't think sciences would regress, or I don't think they should stay the same. What effect does the church have on science? At the moment, I can't see any. I mean, there's creation scientists, but they don't affect scientists. Yeah.
Except making great YouTube videos.
Yeah.
That's about it.
So I don't think much change will happen. There's this massive government support. There's a lot of money behind science. Medical science, for instance, as if that's going to change. Everyone wants to live as long as possible. Most people, sorry. A lot of people want to live as long as possible, so there's a massive incentive for that. So scientifically, so if your mindset is science and human discovery and technological advances are all that matters, then you're fine. Christianity becomes a hoax. What's new? I already knew that. For those kind of people, nothing will affect, but there will be there will be ramifications. I
Of
think.
course. If
Moral and not. I'm not saying that the church gets taken away. Everyone's going to descend into anarchy and immorality. Of course not.
Yeah.
The definitions of morality will shift. They'll be very. Once you prove Christianity is a hoax, and then you've got all these churches now that don't believe in Jesus existed and a whole bunch of stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're not going to cling to biblical morality either.
Mm.
So largely biblical morality would sort of disappear into the morality of the people at the time, and it'll become very societal. That's what I would see as happening. I don't think for a secularist person, much is going to happen for them.
No.
But what will happen for a lot of people will be their whole world being shattered.
Definitely.
Well,
let's actually just say if it was God, religion in general was completely done away with, because atheism is an anti-Christian. It's anti-religion.
Yes. Yeah.
So, with that being said, would it have the same result? Would you find that, because then that's a proven source that this
I think that would cause chaos because of the Middle East, because of all that stuff. But then that question says, is everyone convinced of this though?
Yeah, we'll say that.
Can you convince?
And of course not. It's
I don't think you could.
No.
Even if you came up with objective proof, God doesn't exist, we can show that He doesn't. As if half the people are going to believe you.
Yeah.
But let's say that everyone believes you. Look, we're just speculating here.
Oh, exactly.
We're just speculating. I have no idea. I think for Western society, I have a better kind of grasp of what would happen. I think most people would agree with what I said.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to discuss this stuff. I'm just speculating.
Yeah. No, that's fine. All right. Well, I'll end it with the famous question of, can God microwave burrito so hot that even He himself cannot eat it?
That's a good question, man. I think my whole theistic worldview has just come crashing down.
Yeah.
No, I would answer that question of just saying that. I would just say that if your view of God's omnipotence is He can do anything, I think that's logically contradictory.
Yeah, of course.
God can't do everything, and people go, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? God has to be able to do it. No, God can't make square circles. God can't make a man that's 60 years old. I don't mean that He makes a man that lived to 60. I mean just spawn a 60-year-old man, because he has to live for 60 years.
Yeah.
There are certain things God can't do. And so, for instance, and I would say God has unlimited power. That's a very distinct thing from can do anything.
Yeah.
Two very different things. God can apply unlimited power to a burrito, but He'll never make it hot enough that He can't eat it. That would be how I'd answer that question.
No, that's good. All right. Well, usually at the end of these things, I like to ask if I almost feel like starting an ice bucket challenge type thing where people elect who they want to go next. But is there anything that you'd like to plug, or any sort of books or reading material that you think that will help people come to faith?
Reason for God from Tim Keller.
TK, yeah.
Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. I don't agree with everything he says, but it's a great book, and it really, I think, just lists the common senseness of Christianity. It's not crazy. Well, I'm sure people still think it is, but
definitely.
I don't think it's crazy. I think there's a lot of common sense to it. And C.S. Lewis is really good at drawing out that mindset. So those are the two books I generally give people that are exploring this kind of question. What other books would I do? Peter Hitchens is good. The Rage Against God.
Yeah.
That's kind of good. It really just questions the motives why people don't believe in God.
Yeah.
For some, and so I think that's a good question. He often asks, why do we for an atheist, why do we so want there to not be a God?
Yeah.
And I think that's a legitimate question that I think atheists should answer.
Yeah.
It's not the smoking gun, but I think it's a question that atheists should ponder. It's a question that I pondered when I was on the way to coming to faith. And what else would I plug? Greg Kokel's a good dude.
Yeah.
So I would. He's the guy who does Stand to Reason. They're relatively solid dudes.
Pretty good, yeah.
Apologetic wise, I think that'd be the end of my plugging.
Yeah, I think that's
Tim
good.
Keller. Just
TK,
get into him. He's my bro. He's my boy.
He's my boy. I'll actually I'll plug something that I think is quite great. Is Christopher Hitchens and Peter Hitchens had several debates. I think that they are essential if you want to learn how to debate, but so too if you're just interested in hearing two sides of the same coin. The two people who genuinely care for each other in the debate. They often will comment on things like at one point Peter reminds Christopher to have sweeteners and not sugar because of his blood pressure, which I found amazingly brotherly of him. And two things I'll plug is also I'm going to be starting the Don't Panic group. If you're listening to this and you're a mauling student, essentially we'll be going through some of the bigger heavy hitters in the atheistic community, but so too some concepts and whatnot that many Christians misunderstand. This will be things like evolution, what a theory actually is when talking from a scientific point of view, as well as actually reading source materials as opposed to simply reading refutations. I think this is something that more people really should do. With that being said, thank you, Cody, for being here.
Yeah.
Luke.
Gotta do it, man.
Alright, thanks so much.